Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Pedestrian and Bicycle Information Center Livable Communities webinar. Today's webinar is entitled Walkability for Older Pedestrians, using a free NHTSA workshop that gets results. And we'll be speaking with 4 different presenters today, and I'll introduce them here very briefly. Nancy Pullen-Seufert is a senior research associate with the UNC Highway Safety Research Center and was part of the NHTSA Pedestrian Safety Workshop, a focus on older adults development team, and serves as the principal investigator for the workshop demonstration site project for NHTSA. Ms. Pullen-Seufert holds a Master of Public Health from the University of North Carolina. She's joined by Seth, LaJeunesse, research associate with the UNC Highway Safety Research Center. And Seth serves as the project manager of the workshop demonstration site project for NHTSA. Mr. LaJeunesse is a nationally certified school psychologist and holds a Master of City and Regional Planning from UNC. We're also speaking with Susan Sutherland, a planner with the Delaware General Health District. Susan has been working for the General Health District for the past 29 years in several different environmental health capacities, and for the past 10 years, she's acted as the assessment coordinator for environmental health. Ms. Sutherland facilitates PACE-EH community collaborations that develop and implement annual action plans to address the top environmental priorities. She also writes and works on grants for healthy communities, recycling and litter prevention, and injury prevention programs. And finally, we have Rihanna Babka, the statewide network coordinator for California Walks. And she works with California Walks to coordinate and support the California Walks statewide network and community engagement in local, regional, and statewide healthy and active transportation advocacy. Ms. Babka has facilitated numerous workshops throughout California based on engaging youth, seniors, and communities of color to become effective and empowered advocates for safe and healthy transportation. And my name is Dan Jeline, and I serve as the program manager for the Pedestrian and Bicycle Information Center, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. Attendees, I'd like to ask you, if you can hear me and you can hear our speakers, please click the hand in the box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen to raise your hand so we can be sure our audience can hear us. All right, we see some hands going up. That's great. Glad you all are here with us and can hear us. Before we get started with today's webinar, I want to go over a few administrative details and the functionality of the webinar software. If for some reason your computer or web browser freezes during the webinar, please reload the website and log back into the program. You should be able to rejoin the session by doing that. Please note that attendees will not be able to speak during the webinar. We do expect a large number of attendees on the call, so by muting your audio, it helps to cut down on confusion and background noise. And as an attendee, you have a control box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen that collapses and expands by clicking the double arrows. So you won't be able to speak. You'll have the ability to ask questions by entering them in the question box. If you have a problem during the webinar, you may enter it here, and I'll be monitoring these questions, and I'll try to respond to you if I'm able. Questions pertaining to the presentation may be asked at any time in the question box, but will not be addressed until the end of the program, when we have built in about 20 minutes for a discussion period. Please feel free to ask those questions as we go along, and we'll get to them after the presentation. And also, when you exit the webinar today, there's going to be a very brief survey that will pop up. We'd really appreciate your feedback on our performance today. And following today's webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email. And the email is going to be sent 1 to 2 days after the presentation, and will include a link to download a printable certificate of attendance for the webinar. So if there are multiple attendees at your site, you can forward this link to the other participants, and they can also download and print the certificate with their name. The webinar has been submitted to AICP and has been approved for CM credits. The Road Safety Academy, which is the training and education arm of the UNC Highway Safety Research Center, is a registered provider of CM credits. And for more information on the Road Safety Academy, you can visit www.rsa.unc.edu. And for more information on future webinars or to view the archives from this webinar series and others, please visit walkinginfo.org/webinars. In addition to these webinars, PBIC offers 4 different in-person training courses to provide technical assistance to professionals and community members in developing pedestrian safety action plans and improving conditions for walking. These courses can be found at walkinginfo.org/training. And now I'm going to turn the screen over to Nancy and Seth to kick off our feature presentation, Walkability for Older Pedestrians, using a free NHTSA workshop that gets results. And while they're getting set up with the slide presentation, I just want to take a quick poll from the audience. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have any polls today. I apologize for that technical issue. So what we're going to do right now is just get started right into the presentation. And so again, I'd like to welcome Nancy and Seth, and I'll turn it over to you guys to get started.
Okay, thank you, Seth. And thanks to each of you for joining us this morning or this afternoon, whatever it is in your time zone. And Seth and I are just going to give you a very brief overview because we want to give the bulk of our time together today really for Susan and Rihanna to tell you their stories about how they've used the workshop and the kinds of results that they've seen. But just to give you sort of a big picture about where we're headed together in the next hour or so, in a nutshell, we're going to tell you about a pedestrian safety workshop focused on older adults that the Highway Safety Research Center developed for NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It's been used by 11 demonstration sites that have seen tangible results, and 2 of whom you'll hear from today, as I said. All of the workshop materials and a training on how you can teach the workshop are all available for you to download. I want to start with just a little bit of context about older pedestrians, and probably most of you on the phone know that they are disproportionately represented in terms of pedestrian injuries in the United States. And at the same time, older adults are a growing segment of our population. And they want to be able to age in place in their homes, in their communities, but they need to be able to get around at the same time. Walking may be a form of transportation for some who are no longer able to safely drive, or we want to make it an option for them. And everyone can benefit by walking and getting outside to be able to have the health benefits that go along with that. In 2007, NHTSA funded the Highway Safety Research Center to develop the Pedestrian Safety Workshop with the overarching goal of reducing older pedestrian injuries and deaths. And the specific intent of the workshop was really to convene stakeholders who influence walking conditions at the local level and initiate a dialogue about what needs to be improved about these walking conditions. So we at HSRC were well aware that establishing community and political will for improving pedestrian safety and walking conditions can take time. So we wanted to do something to help communities move the needle a little bit, to help accelerate that process. So the aim of the workshop is, as you see here, that participants leave feeling equipped with the information they need to address walking conditions and that they feel ready to act, that they feel motivated. I want you to keep in mind these 2 objectives because that's what we sought to measure as part of our demonstration project, and Seth is going to share those results with you in just a few minutes. The workshop itself takes about 3 hours to teach. It includes some context setting at the beginning about why pedestrian safety is important and why older adults need to have the ability to be able to move around in their communities as pedestrians. It can be valuable if you've got political decision makers who can only stay for a short part of the workshop. The segment called Watching Out for Us is targeted to older pedestrians themselves and focuses on what they can do to help keep themselves safe while walking. The walking environment talks about changes that can be made to the built environment, to the physical environment. The next part of the workshop talks about enforcement, education, and encouragement strategies that might be appropriate for a community to use. The group takes a brief walk together, talks about what they liked and they didn't like, about what they see during that walk. And the walk is sometimes a destination that seniors currently walk to or want to be able to walk to. Often it is also just a place where workshop participants can apply some of the things that they've heard during the workshop and then use it as sort of a learning lab, really. As I mentioned a moment ago, the Watching Out for Us segment is unique. This is the one that's targeted to older adults. We also designed it to be standalone with the vision that we wanted a potential next step for workshop participants to be taking the workshop and talking with older adults about pedestrian safety. So we've got a web-based training on how to present this module as well. And we really tried to be sure we kept the tone of this module respectful and interactive. Older adults have years of experience as pedestrians, and we wanted to really capitalize on that. So the module really focuses on the most common situations where seniors are hit as pedestrians and what they can do to help keep themselves safe. As I mentioned, all the materials and an instructor training and guide are available online for both teaching the full workshop and for presenting just the Watching Out for Us portion. I've included a link at the bottom about how to access all those materials. They're available for free. Just pick out which option you're interested in and go for it. On that note, I'm going to turn it over to Seth.
Thank you, Nancy. We had the pleasure of overseeing this demonstration project across 12 diverse communities across the country, as you'll see in a moment. 11 of them, as Nancy had mentioned, were capable of fulfilling most of the requirements of the demonstration project. So we'll focus on the outcomes seen at those sites before we get into the more on-the-ground experiences and insights from Susan and Rihanna. So basically, over the course of a year, in exchange for $2,500, demonstration sites were asked to use the web-based instructor training. Nancy had alluded to that earlier. A bunch of materials that help people kind of engage in the workshop and learn how to teach it. They had to plan and teach 4 workshops over the course of that year. But also they participated in a number of evaluation activities with us. So here is just a snapshot of where the demonstration sites are. There's a good amount of geographic diversity, and we also had seen that there's socioeconomic diversity as well among the sites. Just a little snapshot here as well at the aggregate level. About 40 workshops were taught across the 4 sites, 11 sites. 700 people, or a little more than that, attended these workshops, and that's about 18 participants per workshop. The breakdown was about 60% older adult, 40% professional participants. So who are the professional participants? Well, the majority were planners, engineers, health professionals, law enforcement officers, staff of senior centers, and advocates. Some others included elected officials, personnel at public works departments, people like that, stakeholders involved in this activity. So the workshop, where was it taught? Well, the 40 workshops, most of them were taught at these 3 types of locations: senior centers, apartment complexes, and health departments. Yet others were taught at the YMCA, libraries, as well as just general community centers. And as we had seen, the geographic diversity was also kind of typographical as well. We had urban locations, suburban, and then a handful of even rural communities that engage in this. So as Nancy talked about, when we were looking at the effectiveness of the workshop, whether or not it's doing what it's intended to do, we looked at it at 3 different levels. At the individual, including older adults and professionals. We had 2 different instruments for those groups. At the level of the organization, and also within the broader community. What we had seen at before-after tests, we had engaged the older adults and professionals. We had seen about a 20% increase in knowledge and a 13% increase in motivation. So equipping them with what they need to know for the older adults, and then helping professionals feel ready to act. And what these increases mean were, for those who are into statistics at all, 20% increase was a large effect size, and 13% was a medium effect size, so pretty large. What we had seen at the level of the organization, we had seen general interest in the workshop, as well as some of the concepts embedded in the workshop. So 7 organizations said they planned to teach the workshop again in its entirety. The others, maybe not the entirety, but they said, watching out for us, as Nancy had mentioned. That kind of shorter presentation talks about defensive walking skills. They wanted to introduce it to community stakeholders. And a lot of them as well mentioned that they kind of augmented the organizational purpose to specifically consider older pedestrian safety. So that was really important. At the level of the community, now we asked demonstration sites, what sorts of community changes could you attribute to the workshop? Well, here are some of them. Here's a snapshot of that. Lengthened signal timing at certain intersections where older adults may be crossing more often. I thought a really innovative approach, very similar to what New York City DOT is doing with Safe Routes to Seniors, with the Senior Zones approach. So where there's a large proportion of older adults, you have maybe established lower than average driving speeds there. You have shorter crossing distances and longer signal timing. And lastly, what we had seen and what they had communicated to us is that planning and conducting workshops allowed the organizations to establish new or fortify existing relationships with like-minded organizations.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Seth. That's a great overview, and Nancy, a great overview of the program. What we're going to do now is I'm going to turn the presentation over to Susan Sutherland. Again, Susan is a planner with the Delaware General Health District, and she'll be speaking about some experience with offering the webinar. So take it away, Susan, whenever you're ready.
Hello. I'm going to talk a little bit about getting started, and then I'm going to talk about the location and audience and a little bit about our lessons learned and some of the wonderful results. I highly recommend this program in your community. We had great successes, and I'll describe those a little bit later, but in reality, it gets people around the table to talk about walking in your community. So let's talk about getting started first. When you open up the training course material, you are going to see that it's very comprehensive. We learned a lot about traffic safety and walking safety. It is really, really helpful to go over the PowerPoint presentations together as a team. So the person that will be conducting the training with you, go over that together. And then when you're going through the PowerPoint presentations, add the notes that you'll see. There's quite a bit of information in the workbooks. Add the notes to the PowerPoint slides so that when you're giving the PowerPoint presentation, you will have that information with you. Also, I would highly recommend taking local pictures to add to these presentations. That way you can talk about your community's strengths and maybe some weaknesses in walkability. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a local picture that we took, and you can see the red car turning into the walking zone. And at this particular point in time, the pedestrians have the walk signal. So you can see that there's some danger there, and this whole training series talks about walking safety. My next slide is on location and audience. If you're going to provide the workshops, hold the trainings where you can easily do a walking survey. And be aware of the weather conditions too. We had some snow and some inclement weather, but we were able to get out and do an audit. And it's really good information if you can do the audit with the workshop. We worked with the nursing homes and assisted living facilities and senior centers. They helped us find the attendees. But we also had a working relationship with some of the older adults because we do provide injury prevention classes. So hold the trainings at the assisted living facilities. That way you can do a walking survey with your expert panel. And you both can do it together so the experts can hear what the older adults have to say about the walking conditions and the safety during the survey. So while you're going through the program with the audience, make sure you write down everybody's safety concerns, because at the end of the program you're going to want to summarize what everybody said so that you can come up with an action plan to address those concerns. So please make sure that you identify everyone's concern during the workshop. And then during the workshop, have your experts add their input or ask them questions during the presentations so they can talk about safety issues or things that they're thinking about for future projects. It gets them engaged into the discussion. And as you see the slide on the right, the sidewalk dead ends into this pole, and it makes it very difficult for people to see around that pole to see if traffic is coming. So it's another safety issue that we pointed out in our community. The next slide is on your panel of experts. You're wanting to get a lot of people there that will help you talk about the community and the safety concerns and who will address those safety concerns. So we got a lot of police departments there, engineers, senior centers. So we were concerned that if we get these panel of experts, we're going to be preaching to the choir. They already knew this information. They already knew the safety issues in the community. But your experts there are to answer the questions and to hear what the attendees have to say about the safety issues and problems with walkability in the community. So it's important to have your planners and your engineers, your park directors, your police there to talk about this future development plans. Are they linking sidewalks together? Do they have plans of extending sidewalks? What about the traffic signals? What are they going to do about that? So it's really important to have as many people there that you can that can talk about those issues. And to engage the older adults within the workshop, ask them to share their experiences. What kind of concerns do they have when they're out walking? And believe me, they will talk about it. For example, we asked the assisted living facility why they weren't walking in their community, and they said, we're really worried about the speeders. They come flying through this community, and we're just really worried about that. The police department was there. They got a sign posted with speed limit signs and put in some bumps, speed bumps. So we were able to address some of their concerns. And on this slide to the right, you can see the ADA safety, the yellow panel there. So that's really good to have on these sidewalks, particularly for people that aren't able to see. The next slide is develop your course of action. So after the presentations, the attendees want to know what you're going to do. And there's a lot of resources there on developing a strategic plan and how you're going to take action, and that's extremely important to follow up. We made copies of handouts and we distributed to the attendees so that we showed them that there are resources available and that there's things that we can do to address their concerns. So for example, in Delaware, there were a lot of concerns about sidewalk repair needed. And to extend sidewalks in certain areas, sometimes they just dead end. And so people wanted to talk about that and how we were going to address that. They also wanted to increase the Golden Marathon participants. The Golden Marathon is a program put on by Preservation Parks of Delaware County, and it's for all older adults. And once a month, they go to different areas in the community and do a walk. And it's a really wonderful program. It's really well known throughout Delaware County, but they wanted to increase the membership not only for older adults but for young people as well. So we're working on doing that. They wanted to establish an inner city walking group so that they could meet in the center of town, select a route with distances, and do a walking group once a week. A lot of the older adults would like to have shelters and drinking fountains and benches along the walking trails. So all that information was given to the park directors and people that are able to do something about that because they heard what the needs of the community were. And that's what's so good about this workshop. You get people talking about what we can do to develop a strategic plan to address people's concerns. My next slide is on lessons learned. So hold the workshops in the afternoon. Most seniors don't want to leave their residence before 10 a.m. They like to have their morning coffee and read their paper. And make sure you have a good mix of professionals, your experts and your older adults. It's really nice to have half and half because they talk to each other. It's really good that way. And offer an incentive such as a pedometer or safety vest. That really attracted quite a few people to our workshops. And promote the workshop at local senior centers where they meet. We offered it in conjunction with our Matter of Balance classes, which is the injury prevention, fall prevention classes. We also went into the retirement communities and we placed flyers in all the residents' mailboxes. We invited the experts that we already knew that we had great working relationship with. And I can't stress this enough, it's really important to have police, planners, and engineers there to address the safety concerns. And there are quite a few safety concerns that come up in discussion. And overall, everyone was very appreciative of the information. There was conversations on both sides, and it was very engaging and very enlightening for both sides. And as you can see on this slide, the sidewalk stops. And so we talked about extending sidewalks in certain areas. So again, it's really important to have slides of your community of areas of improvement. Some workshop results. Delaware City Police is going to be holding an educational program on safety pedestrian walking. They heard so many concerns about walking in Delaware City and the safety issues that they're going to go ahead and provide an educational program. And not only that, they're going to do a driver's education program as well to protect walkers when they're out in the community, because we heard a lot of concerns about fast drivers. They're not paying attention to signals, so they're going to have that as well. The Center for Older Adults wants to move forward in establishing a senior walking group on site. There's a great resource on how to establish a walking group in your community. So that's all part of this workshop. It's a really good resource. And there's a commitment by our Regional Planning Committee to develop a master plan of the bike and walking trails in all of Delaware County for linkages. So Regional Planning is going to be working with all of our township trustees, all of our park directors, and engineers, and they're going to develop this GIS map of the bike and walking trails in Delaware County, and not only just to show what's available, but to find out where we can link. So if we have a walking trail in one area and we want to get to a park, they're going to show on the community where they need to extend those trails so that we're able to walk east and west and north and south. So it was a very exciting result. And now Delaware City and Powell City are going to be establishing sidewalk priorities. They heard from their community what the priority areas are, where they're walking, and so they want those sidewalk priorities put into a budget and get those sidewalks put in. The walking trails in Delaware City for easy versus challenging walks. We're going to be developing trail maps with regional planning so that we can distribute it to city residents so they can see where they can walk, where there will be easy and challenging walks for them. And then through another grant, we were able to dedicate trail signs. They can run about $75, but a lot of people said they wanted to have distances specified on these trail signs so that people know how long it's going to take to walk somewhere and what the time is. So we're going to be putting trail signs up throughout the county. So we are very, very excited about these workshop results, and we are going to have another one coming up this year. And again, I would highly encourage you to provide this workshop. It's very good information for the community. It brings people around the table. It gets results. It gets a strategic plan done. So thank you very much for your time today.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
I'm going to assume. Okay, excellent. So thank you for having us today, and I really want to say thank you to the Highway Safety Research Center for the opportunity to not only present today on the work that we have done under this grant in the workshops, but also just the opportunity to do the workshops in general. Working with older adults is very near and dear to my heart, so this was a special treat for us at California Walks. So as Seth had mentioned earlier, the UNC put out a call for projects to do this 4-workshop series. And when we actually saw that call for projects, we were in the process of planning a workshop in Southern California with an older adult retirement community. So we actually jumped on the resources that we saw that were available under the call for projects and went right ahead and downloaded the materials so we could utilize them in our work that we did in the community of Alhambra in Southern California. So I mention that now, and I'll give you a few examples of the work that we did in Alhambra as well as Oakland, but I mention it now because I really want to emphasize that downloading the materials and getting all of the information that we needed to do the workshop prior to even going through the workshop training with UNC and being part of the cohort and the team was very straightforward and easy for us. And so I think that it's a really wonderful resource that anyone really can have access to. And, you know, like Susan had mentioned, you can swap out some of your own photos to make it a little bit more localized, but certainly all of the materials that are online are very useful. So, so I'm just going to skip ahead here. I controlled. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to briefly mention why we at California Walks are interested in walking for older adults and kind of what got us engaged in this process. Nancy had talked a little bit about this, but I really want to emphasize that walking is a mode of every it's a part of every mode of transportation, and especially when we're thinking about older adults who may have limited mobility options. And walking is also a huge component for health for older adults. And unfortunately, it's not always safe. So this is a photo of an example where we did one of the workshops where the seniors, the older adults, did not feel comfortable walking in this community because of the low visibility and high speeds in the roadway. So I think using the opportunity that this workshop presents to educate and engage workshop participants is critical for advancing pedestrian safety for older adults. So the solution for us really is to take a workshop such as this, which is a wonderful example, to first educate and collect data, educate older adults and collect data with them to develop a set of priorities and share, and then move forward and share those priorities with local elected officials, with policymakers, with city traffic engineers, et cetera. And so then you can actually see some of those tangible results and outcomes. And the fourth step, I think, for us is to really always make sure that we celebrate success, especially when we're working with community members and people who have devoted a lot of time to improving their environment. So celebrating the success is really critical for us. And so older adults really are a key population because not only are they walkers, but, you know, as the saying goes, a community that is walkable for seniors is walkable for all. And really engaging, there's an opportunity to really genuinely engage older adults in the civic participation to improve the pedestrian safety environment and the walkability of communities that maybe some other populations are have less time to do or just aren't able to get those goals achieved. So older adults really are a key population here. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the examples of the communities that we worked in. And so I mentioned briefly at the beginning that Alhambra was a community where we first, the retirement community here requested that California Walk help them do a workshop so they could have safer crossing to goods and services literally across the street from their retirement community. This picture illustrates that this woman who was living at the retirement community couldn't cross the street with enough time. There was the signal timing for pedestrians was not long enough, especially for older pedestrians in this community. And across the street there was a variety of restaurants, the post office, drugstores, et cetera, that were goods and services that the older adults wanted to be able to safely access. So prior to us coming down and doing the workshop with the older adults, a few of the key community leaders in this retirement community actually went out and took a whole bunch of these photos like the one that you see here to illustrate what was really going on in that community. And they actually shared a lot of these photos and set the stage for when we did the workshop. So let's see. So during the workshop, many of the participants stated that their fears of walking were really directly related to their perceived and the reality of safety when crossing the street that was adjacent to the retirement community. So this concern was again brought up during the workshop itself, and we did the walk audit, which is a wonderful way to experience and really put the practice into the learning. You can talk about walking all you want, but as soon as you get out there and hit the pavement a little bit, you really start to experience what it feels like to be a pedestrian, especially when you're doing a workshop like this and you go out in the group for the walk audit. When you're walking as a group, you tend to go slower, so you see more, you feel more with the streets, you have less time to cross, which was one of the priorities for this community as well. So I want to highlight the success for this because before we did the workshop, I mentioned that the older adult leaders who are pictured here really put a lot of effort to get the word out using some local media sources as well as taking photos and contacting neighbors to be able to have the most robust workshop that they felt they could have as a community. So within that process, they really gained a lot of support. They were able to advertise the workshop in local media sources, the Chamber of Commerce, and actually had a member of the Chamber of Commerce at the workshop because they saw the value in walking as an economic benefit for our community. We also received political support, and the picture here illustrates a proclamation from the city council member in Alhambra who was supporting the older adults in the work that they were doing. And so during the workshop, then the participants made an action plan of the 3 steps that they wanted to do in order to achieve their goal of having a safer crossing to cross the street to access goods and services. So the first one was to actually collect some more data on pedestrian and traffic counts near their site. So they planned to do that, and they did that. The second step was to go to the city council with their data, with their workshop priorities, with their photos that they had collected, and advocate for the safe crossing. And then the third step was to follow up with the city engineer and some other professionals in the community. And within about 6 months, they had actually been able to achieve shorter or longer crossing times at each of the primary intersections so they could more safely access goods and services across the street. So that was a huge success for them. And in our experience, doing this workshop prior to doing the next 4 that we did was also really wonderful, because in our experience we really see that it can take, if you're looking for infrastructure type improvements like this, and there are other types of improvements as well, but if you're looking for those types, it can take at least up to 6 months to get some of those. So we were very lucky that they were able to achieve that success very quickly relatively. Okay, so now I'm going to shift gears and move on to the 4-part series that we did in Oakland, California. And I'm going to give a little bit of framing background and then go into each of the sites a little bit more briefly than I did for the Alhambra one, because there were 4. And then at the end, I'll talk about some of our lessons learned and key successes. So for the Oakland workshops, we partnered with an organization called United Seniors of Oakland and Alameda County. They're a senior advocacy organization here in the Bay Area. And they have a host of walking clubs that they support, about 15 to 20 walking clubs throughout the county. And so what we did was we connected with them, and we identified 4 walking clubs that they had that they really wanted to work on boosting either membership for their walking clubs and or identifying pedestrian safety priorities that the walking clubs could carry on and move forward with. So we did these 4 workshops with the walking clubs, with the leader of the walking club at each one of the 4 workshops. And I'll show you in a minute the map that we used. So in addition to, I want to mention here, in addition to doing the walk audit, one way that we enhanced the data collection during the walk audit component was we did video voice with older adults. So that's a process where you collect video data. So while you're doing the walk audit, you're talking about your priorities, you're talking about what you're seeing in the environment. This is our walking route that we would like to take, but we don't feel safe crossing the street, or the speeds are too high here. So this is one way of collecting data from the community voice itself that really lives on beyond the moment of the workshop. And I'll share an example with you in a minute about how this actually did feed into some priorities and made walking safer in one of the workshop locations. So these are the 4 questions that we asked during a video voice. And it's, prior to doing this, some people not in the United Seniors community, but some others were expressing concern, or maybe older adults wouldn't feel comfortable using the videos, or wouldn't feel like they could be able to achieve a good quality video at the end of the workshop. But I think that they all really were, and it was really fun, and everyone had a really good time with it. So I'll also mention, before I go there, so this is a map of the 4 workshops that we did, and where we actually uploaded the videos onto a website called healthycity.org that we have in California here, and it's a GIS map, so we can see where the workshops were. And when you click online and you click on our little number balloons there, you actually get the video and a little bit of a story on each of the locations. So I'll also bring up that the video voice mapping isn't too heavy on the tech stuff, because we use all free software, but another really easy way to kind of memorialize the data that you're collecting during this workshop is by doing photo mapping. And this is an example of one of the workshops that we did when the photos that we took on the walk audit, and we uploaded them into Babka online, which is a Google software program or Google program online, and then mapped them using Google Maps. So that is now also memorialized for the walking club leaders to take forward with them as they continue to advocate for some of the priorities, and they can have easy access to that as opposed to us, the organization, holding all of the priorities and information. Okay, so I will now go into the 4 workshops that we did. We did 4 in Oakland. The first one was at Eastmont Mall, and this one was our initial workshop. And one of the primary priorities that this group identified when doing the walk was that they didn't have safe crossing access to a regional bus station. So it's like a metro center, it's an outside metro center. And so what they wanted to do is carry this priority forward. And since then, actually the organization, the whole organization of United Seniors has carried this priority forward into their 2012 strategic plan. So it's one of their top priorities to address for the coming year for the Older Adult Walking Club. And also one of the members from this walking club is now a huge advocate and was appointed, a mayor-appointed position to the Oakland Pedestrian Safety Task Force. And I'm going to see if I can show you this video. You might not hear the audio, but there are subtitles here. So this is an example of the video voice project. And I apologize if you can't hear the audio, but I think I do want to give you just a taste of what it looks like to have the videos. It's about a minute long, so it's quick. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that example of a video that really captures the voice of the community members. And you can see here in the last frame of the video, this is the natural crossing point for all of the seniors, all of the kids, all of the community residents, everyone who lives in this community to access the transit center, and there is no marked crossing. So that is one of the priorities that the Senior Center is moving forward with out of this workshop. So the next one here is also in Eastmont Mall. It was at a park location, and this one we actually had a lot of NGO support and a senior rec center. So this one's at a park, and the seniors really wanted to be able to walk safely in this park and gain membership for the workshop or for their walking club. So out of the workshop, they actually successfully that day signed up about 3 or 4 members to be part of the walking club, got support from some NGOs to do some activities like seniors volunteering for Safe Out to School Day in the fall, last fall, or 2 falls ago. And also they really wanted to walk as a form of challenging neighborhood crime. In this location and the first location that I showed you, in both of them, about a week prior to doing both of those workshops separately, they had each experienced some community violence in the area. So the seniors were very adamant that they did not want to let that community violence prohibit them from walking as a form of health and transportation. So they're trying to reclaim some of these spaces by walking and partnering with NGOs and other community members and political support. Okay, moving on to the third one. The third one was in West Oakland, and this was also a smaller walking group, and so one of their main goals was to achieve more members for a walking club so they could walk safely together. Again, crime is a concern for older adults in the West Oakland area, but also along this street here, Adeline, and this is the intersection of Adeline and 18th, the speed limit, I believe, is 25, but cars really drive at much higher speeds, about 40 and 50. And right across the street from the senior center is a park. Kitty Corner is a library, and there are a few bus lanes that come here, and the seniors really feel discouraged from walking to the park, to the library, to the bus stop because of the traffic behavior along that boulevard. So during the workshop, we created a whole list of priorities. We documented through picture and video, and actually through the, from the first workshop I had mentioned that one of the seniors has obtained a seat on the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, so that trickled up and to the city. So once we got to the West Oakland workshop here, the city had found out that we had done this workshop and had some community priorities. So then they actually called us and asked us if we could share our community priorities because they were planning some improvements along West Adeline here, and they wanted to know what the communities, what the seniors at the senior center thought about the pedestrian crossing at this intersection. So we provided all of our priorities, and several of them were, in fact, put into place by the city. So creating smoother crossing in the crosswalk for seniors, like there was, for example, there was a big pothole in the crosswalk, creating higher visibility crosswalk markings, moving the bus stop for better visibility to oncoming traffic, and extending the crossing signal time at that intersection so seniors could more safely access, cross the street and access the park and the library and transit stop. So that was a wonderful outcome that we had. The fourth and last workshop was at North Oakland Senior Center, and this one was really a celebratory workshop. We pooled all of the senior walking groups together that are with United Seniors of Oakland and Alameda County and offered them the opportunity to do this workshop with us together. And this workshop was really wonderful because we did the workshop in the same format and we went on the walk audit, but the priorities, like the next steps that all of them identified at the end of the workshop were really kind of personal goal oriented and group goal oriented. So I want to walk, 5 out of 7 days the upcoming year. I want to communicate with my other walking club group members and friends more about creating that social network so we can walk and support each other when we're feeling down or when we're feeling sick, and also increasing the communication between the walking groups, the walking clubs, because there are about 15 or 20 of them, as I mentioned, and they're really neighborhood specific, but really increasing that communication so they can grow the larger movement of having a senior pedestrian-friendly Oakland. So that was wonderful. Okay, and now I'm just going to mention a few lessons learned and then successes, and I'll wrap up. So a couple of the lessons learned that we would just want to share with everyone who's thinking about doing a workshop like this is really to assess your audience beforehand. And I know it's not always completely easy to do this because you don't know, some people register in RSVPs to workshops like this and some people don't and they show up. But thinking about if the majority of your workshop participants will be older adult community residents or if they will be professionals or if there's going to be a mix, and how you juggle that. And the workshop that UNC provides is a really good frame for that because it speaks to a lot of different audiences that can attend the workshop, but also thinking about some of the language barriers that you might have. One of the workshops, we had a group of Spanish-speaking, monolingual Spanish-speaking participants come, and so we were lucky to have a translator on hand, but that wasn't something that we had anticipated necessarily from the beginning. And as Susan mentioned, thinking about meals, seniors can be very oriented around the meal, especially if you're working at a senior center to do a workshop like this, making sure that you're not conflicting with some of the other activities going on. And then we found that building in a little bit extra time to the workshop is probably a good idea. I think this workshop module itself is 3 hours or 3.5 hours. And I think building in a little bit extra time, so having it maybe scheduled for 4 hours, because ending early is way better than ending late. And when you're doing walks and you have some transition time, and some seniors walk faster than others, so you might have little lags between those transitions. So really building in a little bit extra time, and we found that 4 hours was about the right amount of time. And then this workshop module provides a lot of really good resources, and they're available for you to print out and provide to the workshop attendees. And you might also have some resources from your own community, like contacts at the city or something like that, and providing them in different colors. So when you're working with the participants, you know, you can say, let's all look at the evaluation form and that's yellow or something. And, you know, certainly being also cognizant that some of your older adults might have vision impairment issues, so you might have to work a little bit more closely with them to access some of the information that's on the handout. Okay, and now the last slide that I just want to have a little time to mention is on each of the workshops that we did, I had listed some of the key elements, and I talked about those as I was going through the specific workshop sites, but really in sum, thinking about the key elements that made both the Alhambra and all of the Oakland workshops a success were, for us, the community partnerships were critical, because this was a small grant and we didn't have the capacity to be able to gather a lot of the kind of the base building of community engagement. So we really worked with partners who already had a lot of that base. So in Alhambra, it was the older adult retirement community that approached us, and they were existingly already interested in pedestrian safety. And then with United Seniors, they had the base of the walk club. So in that way, we were able to bring the expertise of this workshop in, but not expend all of our resources and time doing a lot of the outreach. So that was really, really critical to us, and I highly suggest that if you're not a senior center yourself doing this workshop, that you work with a partner who has that tie and that's very integrated to their work that they do. Political support is also really important, because it really provides a lot of motivation and can be a big win for the community members, as well as moving forward into prioritizing some of your actions. It can really move things forward with the city or the local government. So in Alhambra, we had political support from the council member. In Oakland, we had political support from a county supervisor. He's kind of linked in with the United Seniors of Oakland and Alameda County, so that's Supervisor Nate Miley. And having those support really help move your agenda forward, as well as create some energy and momentum and kind of motivation for the older adults who are engaged. And media support is also really critical, because it can get the word out, as well as thinking about media in a slightly different way, like using the video, voice, and the photo to capture the data, the images that the community residents are identifying as the issues that they see in their community, and that the media support really can last throughout a longer period of time than just the workshop itself, so it gives it the longevity that I think a workshop like this can have as you move forward. And also really capitalizing on the older adults who really are and want to be engaged. So one thing that we did during the workshops was, in the first workshop, we identified at least one older adult who was really interested in this but hadn't had as much experience as you know, as maybe some of the other ones or that we had, but she wanted to really develop some of her professional language and everything around pedestrian safety. So what we did was then we asked her if she would be like a helper for us for the other workshops that we did, and we gave her a very small stipend to do this. But we engaged her in the process, and then she had some ownership over it. And I actually saw her recently at another workshop here in Oakland, and she was still working on pedestrian safety issues and still really engaged, and told me about some of the other updates that have happened since the workshop. So I think kind of anywhere that you can capitalize and really build on some of the existing engagement that the community has is going to be really successful in moving any priorities forward. So in sum, I think just having those partnerships in all of these aspects and building the relationships within your community, and if you don't have them now but you want to start working with older adults, build those relationships now and keep them alive, because older adults are really critical in creating a safer pedestrian space. So I think that's it for me, and we really enjoyed doing this workshop, and I highly recommend it to anybody because it's really successful, and it can have, as Susan and I have both shared, it can really have some tangible results that come out of it. So thank you.
Those to us, but we've got about 20 minutes, and I have a list of questions here that I'd like to just pose to you all. The first one that we received is, can you talk a little bit more about the cost of providing the workshop? What are maybe some unforeseen costs that you didn't anticipate? And I know someone mentioned incentives for attendees, and how were those paid for, and what sort of costs were associated with that? If you all could talk about that, that would be great. Either Rihanna or Susan.
This is Susan. Okay.
Go ahead, Susan.
I'll talk about. Okay, thanks. I'll talk about Delaware County, and as Seth was saying, we were provided with a $2,500 grant, so we used that money to buy the food that we provided to the workshop attendees. We had a light snack like fruit and vegetables, and also the facilities were free. The incentives too, we used the grant funding to buy some of the safety vests. The staff time, there was two staffers at about 3 hours per workshop, but we also have an Ohio Department of Health injury prevention grant that helped pay for the staff time to provide the workshops, because that was part of the grant objective as well. Thank you.
And this is Rihanna. I'll mention that we didn't provide the incentives in the same way that Susan did, but for each of the workshops we had a gift card. So from the people who signed up and who were present at the workshop, at the end of the workshop we did a little raffle for the gift card. So I think that is, a small bone. It wasn't a big gift card. I think they were $20 each. And also, always having food at these workshops. Susan mentioned they bought food, and we bought a little bit of food, but we also asked Trader Joe's, which is I guess mostly everywhere at National now, but they're a grocery store that they do provide some in-kind donations. I think they gave us $50 worth of groceries, and so we got to pick out what we wanted for the workshops, and then we split it up between the 4. So that was one way that we did that.
Great, thank you so much. Another question here, sort of about, along the same lines, about motivating participants, but specifically, how did you all motivate the older adults to participate in the workshop? What sort of strategies did you use to really get people there and get them energized and get them excited about participating?
This is Rihanna. For our Alhambra workshop, we didn't have any issues with that because they had really approached us. It was a concern that really was growing out of the community that they wanted, so that wasn't an issue for us there. With our Oakland workshops, because they were partnered with the walking clubs, and this is why partnerships are so critical, because we didn't have the time to go out and do any door-to-door knocking and motivate people ourselves because of the small grant size, but having that partnership, then we had a meeting with each of the Walk Club leaders, and we made a strategy plan for how that they would outreach to their constituents and motivate them to come. So they did that. They put it in their newsletter. They called. They informed everyone in each of the Walk Clubs that we were doing it, as well as all of the Walk Clubs. And then the Walk Club leaders called the Walk Club members a week before the event and also the day before the event to remind them and really kind of boost up some of the energy for it.
This is Susan in Delaware. I must say that's a good question because we had some concerns about how we were going to get older adults to attend this workshop, particularly since it's 3 hours in length. But we were surprised to find out that there's a lot of people that would help us to recruit people, particularly at your assisted living facilities. The facilities event director, he put a flyer in everybody's mailbox, and he also does the events at the senior centers. So he knew a lot of older adults, and he kept saying, you've got to go to this workshop. It is such a great workshop. You will really have a lot of fun. You'll learn a lot. And so he recruited a lot of people for us. Also, as I was saying during my presentation, the Golden Marathoners, they're the ones that are in the walking club at Preservation Parks at Delaware County. They participated in a lot of the workshops too, so you might ask your park directors if they have walking groups. We also talked to the Senior Center to get participants as well. But we found out that even if you have only 15, that works really well, because when you're doing the walking survey, you want a small group. So 15 is probably about the max that you would want to have during these workshops. Thank you.
Great, thanks to you both. One other question here. We have a number of people who are joining us from communities that are in more rural settings. Would you say that this is a workshop that could be relevant for a rural community?
I think so. This is Rihanna. I think so. I think one of the key things to make it feel relevant would be to swap out some of your local photos into the presentation itself. And the presentation that they have online is fully editable, so that is available. Because I think that there are a lot of issues where even if you're in the rural communities, you still would, for example, one of the kind of concerns that is highlighted in the workshop is thinking about parking lots and driveways. And so while those are not necessarily as prevalent in rural areas, but they're still really important, especially when you think about having centers where people might go, shopping centers or grocery stores, and thinking about pedestrian safety in that context. So that's, there is an urban element to it, but I think if you swap out some of your local photos and make it feel like it resonates with the community that you're working with, I think it's completely applicable.
And we did conduct one of our workshops at a rural site facility, and it was actually at the Center for Older Adults. It's where they go. 3,000 older adults are members of this facility. They have a swimming pool, and they have physical fitness programs, and they have a nice cafeteria. But anyway, they attend that, and they actually wanted to start a walking group right there at that center, but it's in the rural community. So it was really interesting that we were able to meet there, hold the workshop there, and do a walking survey. And all of the walking survey results we gave to the center, and also to the engineer that was present and the regional planning director that was present. We gave them all of those results. We typed them all up and gave them to them, and they are developing a plan of action so that we can have a walking group there. They were worried about the railroad tracks, that there were no signals there. There's a roundabout, which are very complicated for drivers and pedestrians. So they wanted to hold roundabout workshops, educational workshops in the community. So I think it's very important to hold one of your workshops in a rural environment, because that's where a lot of your older adults are living in our community. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Moving along with another question here. Many communities have older adults that have low vision or need to be accommodated because of vision needs. Did you take any steps or have to do anything to especially include these individuals in the workshop?
This is Rihanna. We did, when we were looking at some of the documents that we had, I think it wasn't quite clear to us whether it was a low vision or maybe a literacy issue for some of the older adults. So we did spend some extra time when we were doing the pre and post evaluation survey in the workshop to sit with a couple of older adults, and we just, we gave it a lot of time and kind of went around to everyone and checked in and made sure that they felt comfortable with it. But certainly I think that might be a modification that, especially if you were working with a group where you knew in advance that they would have vision issues, for at least the kind of the paperwork component of it. We didn't come across that ourselves during the walking component, but we do always ask people when we go on a walk like this, we divide up into a longer or bigger group, or if we want to, with a smaller group that would maybe just go a shorter distance. So sometimes we do that, and we also make sure that everyone who's there feels very comfortable walking, and we emphasize safety when we do walk. So we didn't have it come up in these workshops this time, but so I don't have an answer to that one actually.
Yeah, I think that's the same answer for Delaware. We didn't have many participants in the workshop that had either no vision or sight impairments, except for, you know, the ones wearing glasses and things. But I did learn a lot about the ADA requirements, and I think, like I said, it's extremely important to have zoning there as well as building departments, because they are very familiar with these ADA requirements, and there were a lot of questions by the older adults on what exactly is required for vision impairments. So a very good point, and it's very, very good to have someone in the audience with low vision or vision impairments. Thank you.
Thank you. We just got another question here. The person asked, how do you keep the participants active when it often takes 3 to 5 years to program, design, and build some of these sidewalk projects and other improvements that you're talking about?
Well, I think, this is Rihanna, I think that there's a lot more to pedestrian safety than just infrastructure improvements. And so really identifying what community members can do here and now that we can do. So starting a walk club, doing walk assessments yourself, doing neighborhood cleanup days, anything that community members can do to get the word out that they're looking at pedestrian safety, like have a media event, hold for lack of a better word, like a walk parade or some event like that. I think that those are things that can not only help move a political agenda forward to achieving some infrastructure improvements, but really set the stage for the older adults to have small successes so you can have that momentum live on. And, you know, for example, like doing a pre-walk audit like this workshop can do, and then maybe formalizing it and writing up a report about the walk audit, that could potentially lead to a funding opportunity. So having some partners that you can identify to keep that motivation going and look for funding opportunities, and then having the smaller successes like a walking club or media event startup, that's what we've found to be very successful in keeping the motivation.
And I agree. Very, very well put. What we did in Delaware County is we conducted the PACE-EH, the Protocol for Assessing Community Excellence in Environmental Health. It's a guidance document by NHTSA, and it helps develop a survey to ask your community residents what their environmental concerns are. One in Delaware County was, we want more bike and walking trails. So knowing that that was a leading priority issue in Delaware County, we took that to the elected officials here in Delaware County, and again, we got a lot of media coverage for that. A committee came out of that called Forever Green, and it's there's township trustees, there's regional planners, there's park directors, there's the health district involved in this bike and walking trail. And we were looking for funding. We found funding through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. The county commissioners gave us $600,000 to back this grant and help develop the Ohio to Erie Trail through Delaware County. So it's really important to find out what your community concerns are, get that out in the media, get your elected officials involved, and again, look for funding, and then start developing a strategic plan. This workshop is wonderful in providing that kind of resources.
And I would also just add one more thing that I think both Susan and I gave a couple of examples of situations where we saw small infrastructure improvements within really 6 months to a year. And so they're just knowing like what you can achieve that will, you know, like a speed limit sign, lowered speed limit sign, longer crossing time, moving a bus stop, you know, having some higher visibility crosswalks, et cetera, put in. Those types of things really can calm the traffic or make the street feel safer for older adults and give them the success without, you know, tearing up the whole street and putting in bulb outs and 2 lanes versus 4 and stuff. You know, it doesn't have to be a huge infrastructure project to really improve safety or perceive safety.
Great, thank you very much. One other question, and Rihanna, you may have touched on this a bit earlier, but are any of these resources available in Spanish, or did you have to put anything into Spanish for some of your audiences, or any other languages for that matter?
So in the workshop that we did, we had one where we had some Spanish attendees and we did some simultaneous translation. We didn't have the resources at that point to translate it into Spanish. However, since then, UNC Highway Safety Research Center has translated the Watching Out for Us section into Spanish. So that's the section that speaks directly to the older adults and what older adults as a pedestrian can do. It's not the complete workshop module, but it's a really good start, especially from the older adults perspective. So that is available in Spanish now, and I think that, I don't know if UNC has other updates on maybe some other translation of the materials, but I think they're in, loosely in the pipeline for the future. I think that that's a wonderful idea. And Spanish is the primary secondary language out here, and so that's what we use. I think it would be great to have more languages for a workshop like this, reaching some of the communities that haven't received any education around pedestrian safety in this manner.
Okay, great.
Delaware. Just to address Delaware real quick, we are very fortunate at the Health District to have a Spanish translator on staff, but we didn't have a need for that during these workshops at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And just to give a small plug, the module that Rihanna talked about, we actually have that that webinar archived on the Road Safety Academy homepage. So if anyone's interested, you can go to rsa.unc.edu, and it's right there on the homepage. Feel free to download that and take a look if you're interested in those Spanish materials. We have time for just one more question. So this one relates to the professionals who attended the workshop. How difficult was it to get professionals to attend the workshop, and what were some of the strategies that you used to attract them?
This is Rihanna. So for us in Alhambra, it was really easy to get some professionals to attend the workshop. And that was because the seniors, the older adults, had really done some personal outreach to those professionals. So they came and they got a lot out of it, and then they worked closely with them in the follow-up as well. For our Oakland ones, it was a little bit trickier to get some of the city-level professionals there. But what we did find was there were a lot of NGO support and some support from the police department as well at the workshop. So I think it's just having that personal connection. We reached out to people individually and also included people from the beginning when we first found out that we had the workshop series that we were going to be offering. We invited several of the city employees and engineers and police. They weren't the police officers who came, but they were neighborhood service coordinators, so they're like the liaison between police and the community. So we reached out to those people that we already had the contacts with and invited them to be part of the process from the beginning. And a couple of them responded, and they couldn't put in a whole bunch of resources, but then when we actually had the workshops, they did show up to them. So that's how we were able to reach out to them and get the participation. It's not always easy, but I think having the personal relationship and doing the follow-up with them and kind of the one-on-one is really important.
I agree. I think it's really important to have that personal relationship with your experts, but also the easiest way that we found to get them there is saying, you are our experts, you're our expert panel, we really need your help, we need your insights, and we need your knowledge and your skills and your information, and they were, sure, we'll be there.
Well, great. Thank you all so much for that. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for discussion. If we didn't get to your question, we're trying to address all of the submitted questions after the webinar with our presenters, and we'll be trying to post those to the webinar page where you can find the archive. The recording of today's program, as well as a PDF of all the slides, will be available in about a week on walkinginfo.org/webinars. And a link to the webinar archive, as well as instructions for downloading your certificate of attendance, is going to be sent in an email, which will be coming out in the next day or so. Finally, I want to remind you all that a very brief survey is going to appear once the webinar has ended. We'd appreciate you taking a moment to complete it. And once again, thank you very much again to all of our speakers, Susan, Rihanna, Nancy, and Seth. And thanks to all of you for attending today's PBIC Livable Communities webinar. Have a great day.